going to air it out. Down the field. Catch and the touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Kosko.
It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attilas Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Going to take you up to 9 a.m. today as we get set for Week 11 in the college football season. I can't believe it's Week 11 already. We are almost 2 total weeks into the month of November. It's Saturday morning, November 13th, and we are now 2-ish weeks away. I have to keep track. 2 or 3 weeks away from rivalry weekend. I think it's now 2 weeks away, actually, after today. Only 3 games left for most of these teams, and it's crazy. Once we get to that time of the year, we get rivalry weekend, we get conference championship weekend, and all of a sudden, it's bowl season, ladies and gentlemen. We wait 2 weeks, and then, boom, bowl games in Boca Raton, Florida, down in the Bahamas, and all these random locations. And then we get into the New Year's Six, of course, and then the actual college football playoff. And that is where we're going to start today before we get into my 5-pack of picks at the end of the show. Looking ahead to some of the games this week as well. It's the college football playoff rankings, folks, because there were some controversies over the latest top 25. Now, there are numerous ones, and there are inaccuracies up and down the top 25. But the one that stands out is, of course, the flip-flopping of 2 in-state rivals, Michigan and Michigan State. Now, you go back to last week, Michigan State was number 3. All right? Undefeated. They just fresh off beating Michigan. They're number 3. Michigan is number 7. And now, with Michigan State's loss to Purdue last week, at the hands of the Boilermakers, who upset everybody at this point, Michigan got back on the right foot, beat Indiana. Great. But because of that, the committee decided to say, yeah, we're going to flip you guys now. Michigan State dropped 4 spots to number 7, and the Wolverines moved up to number 6. Now, you have to tell me how this makes sense, because they are not using the head-to-head argument here, and the CFP committee chair, Gary Barr, who's also Iowa's AD, he mentioned something where the committee was actually considering putting Michigan ahead of Michigan State last week, despite literally just losing to them. Now, mind you, these rankings come out on a Tuesday. This is 3 days after the games have been played. So you mean to tell me 3 days after that game was played, there was still some consideration to putting Michigan above Michigan State? That is absurd. They just lost, and at the time, Michigan State was undefeated. They hadn't lost to anybody. Michigan's lone loss is to Michigan State. Now, you can judge the quality of their wins however you may feel like, but they had both these teams steadily climbing the rankings. And then in the first edition of the rankings, Michigan State goes number 3, Michigan goes number 7. Now, the argument for this week, you could say, well, Michigan lost to the previous number 3 team in the country. Okay. They still lost to them. What is the other impressive win on Michigan's schedule? Beating Washington at home, on the road at Nebraska. They did not play Penn State yet. They actually do play them today. And they haven't played Ohio State yet. They didn't play the other 2 big teams in their own division. They scraped by Rutgers, which they're a very Jekyll and Hyde team this year. They beat up on Indiana, who stinks. Where is that other big win for the Michigan Wolverines? Especially since you have yet to play Penn State. And, of course, Ohio State. They didn't play Maryland. They didn't finish their division yet. They have to go at Maryland next week. Now, they did go on the road and beat Wisconsin, which looks like a better win now because they are ranked within this top 25, which actually blows my mind because they're 6-3 and they looked horrible to start the year. They're number 18 now, and I'll get into that in a second. There's a lot of discrepancies within the Big 12 or the Big 10 right now. So Michigan's best quality wins this year are road wins at Wisconsin, at Nebraska. 2 Big Ten opponents, but Nebraska, despite their record, looks a little bit better than they are. But still, they're 3-7. And they went on the road, and they did, don't get me wrong, they did dominate Wisconsin on the road, 38-17, beating them by 21. So that's a good win. Now, the eye test tells you Michigan's easily a top 10 team. Yes. But ahead of Michigan State makes no sense. They lost to them head-to-head, and they used this argument with Oregon and Ohio State. Now, Oregon, again, terrible loss to Stanford, and I can argue that's a worse loss than Michigan State's was to Purdue. Because, mind you, Purdue already upset number 2 Iowa this year, and they put Purdue back at number 19 in the latest CFP rankings. So, by this logic, Michigan State's lone loss is to the number 19 team in the country, but they beat the team that's ahead of them. So why in the world are they behind them by 1 spot? Michigan's only loss is to Michigan State. Michigan State's only loss is to the number 19 team in the country, a team within their own conference. So by that logic, Michigan State should be ahead. All right? You can use the eye test all you want. Now, you could say, well, Michigan was ahead in that game, 30-14. There was a blown call on the sack fumble for a touchdown from Aiden Hutchinson that could have led Michigan to a dominating victory. Yeah, sure, a blown call, but don't forget, even without the blown call, they're up by 2 touchdowns late in the second half. You cannot allow Michigan State to come all the way back. You can't be up 30-14 and then lose 37-33. It just can't happen. Cannot happen. You can't be up by 2 scores and then lose in that game with the way you were playing. They scored 3 points the rest of the way. You blew the game. I know it was on the road, but you blew the game. You blew the game. Oregon went on the road, and look, these situations are more similar than when you think about it. Oregon went on the road and beat Ohio State. They didn't go and lose to Ohio State. This is like saying Oregon's only loss of the year would be to Ohio State, and then Ohio State got upset by somebody. But then Oregon's all of a sudden back in front of Ohio State. Oregon's in front of Ohio State right now because of the win over Ohio State. If the committee wanted to stay consistent, they would have flipped Ohio State and Oregon right now. But then people have been like, wow, I don't know why Ohio State's in front of Oregon. They lost to the Ducks at home earlier this year. Now, sure, can I make the argument that Ohio State is a better team than Oregon at this point? Yes, but the committee, they want to use their so-called eye test. They don't use it in that instance. They'll use it in Michigan State, which for some reason they think Michigan's a better team right now. Will Michigan be ranked higher if, let's say, they win out? Yeah, they will. But don't forget about the tiebreakers. So now we're getting deep into the weeds here. They've lost head-to-head to Michigan State, so it'd be fascinating to me if they actually won out. They're 11-1, but let's say Michigan State won out as well. That would mean both Michigan schools are beating Ohio State. So Ohio State's out, right? They're done. 2 losses. But Michigan State would have the tiebreaker over Michigan and go to the Big Ten title game. So at that point, are you still going to put Michigan above Michigan State? The committee has brought these problems onto themselves right now. It could have been fine if they kept Michigan State above Michigan, or I would have understood it maybe even a little bit more. It still would have been bonkers, but you could have put Ohio State over Oregon this week, put Ohio State at 3, Oregon at 4, and then keep Michigan and Michigan State at 6 and 7 respectively. That I would have understood a little bit more, because at least you're staying consistent with your arguments. And in the midst of all that, Cincinnati was ranked 5, Georgia and Alabama were 1 and 2. So there's your top 7. And just around the top 10, Oklahoma 8, Notre Dame 9, Oklahoma State is 10. All right, and then at this point, I didn't even get into the other inaccuracies with this ranking yet, or with these rankings yet. Now it is wild to me that Oklahoma is 9-0 and they are still below Michigan and Michigan State. Now, Would I pick Michigan or Michigan State over Oklahoma right now? Yeah, I probably would. So at least the eye test, at least in my mind, gives me those two schools over the Sooners right now. But it's still, a 9-0 team is at 8, and they're below a 9-0 team that's in the group of 5 in Cincinnati. Yeah, that is a little questionable, but if you look at Oklahoma's schedule, they've struggled pretty much all year long, and I think the committee has a bad taste in their mouth due to that bad performance against Kansas the other week. They were on a bye week last year because they already played 9 games. And don't forget, that season opener against Tulane, woof, that was rough. And again, but Oklahoma has managed to win every single football game. But now it gets very interesting. And I'll get into Oklahoma in a little bit because they are a fascinating subject when it comes to these rankings and what's going to happen over the next 3 weeks. But I do want to look at the other inaccuracies in these rankings, and they involve, again, they involve more Big Ten teams, but also SEC. I didn't forget about the quote-unquote premier conference. So Auburn and Wisconsin are 17 and 18 respectively, both 6-3, but yet they both have losses to Penn State. And folks, Penn State is not ranked. Penn State is not in the top 25. How is this possible? Penn State is also 6-3. The AP poll has them at number 23. So tell me why they aren't in the top 25 of the CFP rankings when they have head-to-head wins over the number 17 and number 18 teams in the country. Now you could say, well, Nick, their losses are pretty bad. Okay, let's look at their losses. On the road against Iowa, who at the time was a top 10 team in the country. And they did propel number 2 after this win. They lost 23-20, and they lost their start. See, look. I was a champion for Iowa when this game occurred in early October. But I can't even say in hindsight, but on the flip side of things, Penn State did lose Sean Clifford in that game. And they lost 23-20. You lose your starting quarterback, you only lose by 3 on the road in that environment. I think that's a pretty darn good game. It's an impressive loss, so to speak. So that's the game they lost. All right, first loss of the year. Fine. So they're 5-1 now. Now the bad loss is the Illinois loss at home. Now it's also I will say as a caveat here, I will say it was in 9 overtimes with the new overtime rules, where it was just a 2-point conversion shootout after the second overtime. So in that instance, okay, some freaky things could happen. Now you could say, well, Penn State shouldn't have allowed that to happen in the first place because the 2 exchanged field goals in the one overtime period, and then they allow themselves to get into that position. That's fine. That's a logical and realistic argument. Either way, it is a bad loss because they were at home. You should not be losing to Illinois if you're Penn State. I get that. That's fine. But the next week, and I get they lost 3 in a row, but they lost to Ohio State on the road. So the 2 of their 3 losses are on the road to top teams in the Big Ten, in their own conference. And I'll tell you, at Iowa right now is number 20 in the country. And of course, Ohio State is number 4. So they've lost to the number 4 and number 20 team in the country, and they've beaten the number 17 and number 18 team in the country, and they have 1 bad loss. But here's where that head-to-head argument just goes out completely out the window again. It's only used for Oregon, Ohio State for some reason. But it's not used for Michigan, Michigan State, and it's not used when judging Penn State. Look at these teams below Auburn and Wisconsin. At number 19, it's Purdue. Penn State did not play them. Okay? They beat Iowa, who's number 20. Pittsburgh is number 21. All right, if you want to put them below number 21, Pittsburgh, you know what? I can be kind of okay with that, despite the fact that they beat 2 of the teams ahead of them, but they did lose to Iowa. And again, Illinois is a bad loss, even though Illinois is somehow picking it up. And I think they have 4 wins now, so they could be bowl eligible somehow. So if you want to put them at 21 or 22, that's fine. But look at 22 through 25. San Diego State, they're 8-1, good season. UTSA, they should be ranked. They're 9-0. Utah is 6-3. If you can't at minimum put Penn State at 24 over Utah, and then Arkansas is number 25, 6, Arkansas has been going way down since their September championship. Yeah, they were ready to crown Arkansas the SEC champions after September. You mean to tell me you can't put Penn State at 24-25? It makes no sense, especially, and again, I like Utah, I like Arkansas, but Penn State not being ranked is ridiculous. The teams above Auburn and Wisconsin, by the way, because they're 17 and 18. NC State at 16. They're really good. And then Ole Miss, and then you get into the BYUs, the Baylors, Wake Forest. So at that point, you probably can't even put Penn State in the top 20 if you're going to put Auburn and Wisconsin at 17 and 18. But again, they beat them head to head. So I mean, to me, I would put them lower, Auburn and Wisconsin. And I get it was last week where Auburn was 6-2. Everyone's like, well, they actually have a path to the playoff because if they actually win out, they're going to be 10-2. They'll have a win over Alabama. Actually, let me go back to Auburn's schedule real quick because I did mention this last week where they realistically had a path to the SEC title game. All right, so last week they played Ole Miss at home. You get that win. All right, sorry, I beg your pardon. They beat Ole Miss, and then they lost to Texas A&M last week. Now, if you beat Texas A&M on the road, you're going to shoot up. You're going to shoot up the ranking a little bit. Because this week they're number 17, and last week they were 13. Okay, they were 13 last week. Texas A&M was 14 in the CFP rankings. You win that game, you're going to be at least in the top 12, right? Maybe even close to the top 10. Then you host Mississippi State today at South Carolina, but then you have number 2. Again, I don't think Alabama's going to lose, but you have number 2 Alabama at home in the Iron Bowl, right? So imagine they're the number 10 team in the country, right? And they're 9-2. Alabama is 10-1. They beat Alabama, right? So let's just say they're 2-10 in rankings wise, respectively. Auburn goes with a win, let's say to number 6. And Bama goes to 7, something like that, or 5-6, whatever the case may be. They can go as high as 5, let's say. Now you're going to play, and again, I don't think Georgia's going to lose either. But then you play number 1 Georgia in the SEC title game. You absolutely get in if you beat Georgia. You beat Alabama and Georgia in the same year, back-to-back weeks, knocking off Texas A&M and Ole Miss. You're basically you're rolling through your own division. And even say that if they didn't lose last week, their only losses would be to Penn State and Georgia. So they would split meetings with Georgia. Auburn would absolutely get them with 2 losses, but that pipe dream's over. So that just goes to show you. I mean, because they're 6-3 right now. That just goes to show you that the committee respects what Auburn brings to the table. So if you respect them that highly, why is Penn State not above them? Penn State then should be number 17 and then bump everybody else down at that point. And again, I know they lost to Iowa, but you want to use this so-called eye test and see again. Now it goes back to the argument of, well, we think Michigan is a better team than Michigan State right now, and they probably would have been better last week, but they lost. Okay, then you make the same argument with Penn State over Iowa if you're going to put Penn State above Auburn and Wisconsin. See where we go, folks. This is why these conversations are so ridiculous. That's why you're going to see these inaccuracies. You have all these arguments, and then all of a sudden you go down this rabbit hole of where these teams should be. Where these teams should be. Now, again, I do think Penn State should be ranked, but now you're getting into the weeds here. That's why you need clear criteria. If you're going to put this criteria out there, where they're going to put an emphasis on conference championships, especially in the Power 5, do matter. Quality out of conference wins matter. Head-to-head matters. The eye test matters. Okay, well, you need to rate that criteria, and you need to use it consistently. You can't just use the eye test over head-to-head when you think it's convenient. And right now, they think it's convenient to use the eye test over Michigan over Michigan State right now. And to me, that makes no sense. As far as the rest of the rankings are concerned, I'm not really mad, and I'll dive in again. In the next segment, I'll dive into more of the Big 12 picture, where you have Oklahoma State, and Baylor at 8, 10, and 13, respectively. Other big news: Wake Forest dropped. I think they were 10 last week. Let me just double check. They were 9 last week. They dropped to 12 after their loss to North Carolina. So they're 8-1. The ACC's dreams are over. I mean, isn't it amazing? Wake Forest could still win out and go 12-1 with an ACC title, and they would probably only move up to about 7 at the most. They are well outside the top 4. It's amazing. The ACC did that to themselves. And Notre Dame, without a conference title, is going to be ranked higher than them by the end of the year if they both went out. But again, you're talking about everybody running the table at this point, which is, it is impossible. So I'll dive into the rest of the rankings coming up. I'll talk about Oklahoma a little bit because they are a fascinating case at 9-0, and they're only at number 8. Then, of course, later in the show, we'll get into my 5 picks. Don't forget, don't worry, folks. I will also get into some of the other games this week that I am not picking. Some that are a little look, don't touch, or some interesting matchups going on this week as we head into the home stretch of the college football season. Keep it locked here. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Back here on College Football Pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you, taking it to 9 a.m. on this Saturday morning, week 11 of the college football season. So after getting my rankings angst out of the way, we could talk about more rankings angst, really, so to speak. And not that it really gets me to really question what's going on with these rankings, but Oklahoma at 8 is just more so curious than anything. They're 9-0, but they're number 8. They're behind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 one-loss teams. The only unbeatens in the latest rankings coming in were Cincinnati at number 5 and, of course, number 1 Georgia. Both 9-0. Now, I can see the committee's problem with Oklahoma. Let's look at the schedule. 40-35 win, season opener against Tulane at home. All right, not a good win. It was a bit of a scare. 76-0 over WCU. It's an FCS school. 23-16 at home against Nebraska. And again, Nebraska's played a lot of teams close, but they're 3-7. So the committee's going to say, well, that's a 3-7 football team. And they weren't good at the start of the year, believe me. 16-13 over West Virginia at home. Not good. I know it's a Big 12 opponent, but remember that was the game where they were calling for Caleb Williams to come in for Spencer Rattler. On the road at Kansas State, 37-31. Road win, close one, but didn't blow their doors off. The Texas win is impressive in the Red River Showdown just because it was an epic comeback, but it was sparked by Caleb Williams. The next game, TCU, 52-31. All right, so a bit of a blowout. But you're giving up 31 points. But solid win. You won by 21. On the road against Kansas. Now, don't let the 12-point spread fool you. That was a close game. And at one point, Kansas, again, they are a dreadful football program. At one point on the radio, they announced that admission was free. Just come on in. There could be a huge upset brewing over the number 4 team in the country. At the time, yes, they were. I think they were the number 4 team in the country in the AP poll. They're like, yeah, come on in. Gates are open. And they filled the stadium. They managed to pull away, but it was not inspiring. And then 2 weeks ago, they did blow out Texas Tech. So they have 2 blowout wins. But the rest of it, you're edging out your conference opponents. You had to come all the way back against Texas, who now is just going down at this point. The Kansas game was terrible. Kansas State game wasn't any good. Nebraska and West Virginia gave you some questions. And the Tulane game wasn't good either. So I can understand where the committee's coming from. They're saying, yeah, you guys are really good and you happen to won. You have won every single game you've played this year, but we're not ready to crown you. And now, guess who they play the final 3 weeks? At Baylor, home against Iowa State, at Oklahoma State. That's a gauntlet for a team like this that I've ever seen. Because Baylor is 13, Oklahoma State is 10. They're both in contention for the Big 12. Iowa State, of course, is basically out of it at this point, but they're no pushover. Don't forget, Iowa State was the team that played Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game last year. So I'm not ruling anything out. Oklahoma could very well lose one of these games. Now, at this point, I think, to me, the only Big 12 teams that can make the playoff are Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State would have to win out and then hope for the best. And to be frank, let me just check the Big 12 standings here. Let's just say Oklahoma wins out, so does Oklahoma State, but then Oklahoma State beats them. They're both going to have one conference loss. So you're going to have a rematch. And then if Oklahoma wins that rematch, then it will cancel everything out. Because Oklahoma State will be eliminated, and then Oklahoma with one loss is probably not going to get in based on what's in front of them right now, which is Big Ten heavy, SEC heavy. So it's just, can they get in? Yes. Can Oklahoma State get in? Yes. You can't forget about Oregon. Because realistically, folks, you're going to see probably, if I had to pick it right now, Georgia 1. Maybe I would probably move Ohio State to 2, as I do think they are going to win out. Which in the end, I think is going to be a little bit more for their resume than over Oregon, even if Oregon does win out. So that's the case. Then it's Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Bama 3, and then you have a jumbled pile based on the rankings on Tuesday. You have a jumbled pile between Cincinnati, Michigan, Michigan State, and Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, if they're undefeated, they should get in. If they're 13-0, they're going to find a way to put them in. Because at a certain point, now, what could screw them is if Bama and Georgia meet in the title game, Bama wins, they're both going to get in. They're both going to get in. Then Oregon and Ohio State both went out. Then a 13-0 Oklahoma team might be stuck at 5. Not even kidding, because the committee has not respected them all year. Now they'll have better quality wins, so there's going to be an argument to put them in over one of them. Namely, it'll be Oregon or Ohio State. And then if they go in over Oregon, Oregon's gonna be like, well, we beat Ohio State. If they go in over Ohio State, they're gonna go, Ohio State would beat the crap out of Oklahoma right now, which I agree with. So now that's where we have those problems again. And again, that's my slight argument right now, and I'm not gonna get into it today. But there you go. There's my argument for the expanded playoff. We wouldn't be having these conversations, folks. Now, you could say, well, if you expand to 12, they're going to argue over who's going to be 12 and 13. Yeah, sure, but in the end, is it really going to matter? Because you're going to have, the first round playoff game is going to be a home game for the higher seed, so the 12th team's going to go on the road anyway, and then the 12th team, then you're basically playing for, all right, who's going to play the number 1 seed in the next round? Because you're going to have 12 teams, the top 4 are going to have byes, so you're going to have 5 versus 12. Which, if you look at the most recent rankings, in this case it would be Cincinnati hosting Wake Forest. If Cincinnati wins, you would think they're going to go at Ohio State based on those rankings. But if Wake Forest pulls the upset, they're going at Georgia. You mean to tell me Wake Forest is going to beat Georgia? Or let's just say they flipped them and it was Baylor. Let's say if the argument was Baylor or Wake Forest, you think one of those teams they pull off an upset against Cincinnati, they're going to go out and beat Georgia this year? No way. Now, again, that's why you play the game. I understand that. But, again, this is the argument for the expanded playoff because you cannot, at this point, you cannot have 4 teams in. Because, again, don't forget, the CFP is in the television. See, folks, now I'm on a rant here. Now, see, the CFP is in a television business. All right, they're in the money-making business. That's what college football is to the higher-ups, and hence why the NIL was their little way of saying, yeah, now the athletes can make some money as well. But realistically, it's a television show. ESPN owns everything that is college football playoff related, so why not add more playoff games anyway, just from that perspective? Plus, it gives you a nice, look at these matchups, by the way. If we had a 12-team playoff based on the most recent rankings, all right, so Georgia, Bama, Oregon, Ohio State. Top 4 have byes. Here are your first-round matchups. Wake Forest at Cincinnati. Texas A&M at Michigan. Oklahoma State at Michigan State. Notre Dame at Oklahoma. You wouldn't watch that. Give me a break. dilute the bowl games? Who cares? Now, as me as a Rutgers fan and an alum, yeah, am I going to go, what I care about Rutgers bowl game? Absolutely. I'll go watch Rutgers bowl game. I'll watch some other bowl games with some other big school names in it. But yeah, I'll still watch bowl games that are involving big brand schools or schools that I care about, that's what fans are going to do. But then they're going to see, but they will also see, wow, there are 3 rounds of the playoff. Make that mean something. People are going to say, well, if you make the playoff and you lose in the first round, you have nothing to show for that postseason. When let's just say, I don't know, Hawaii can win a bowl game and then they're considered a champion of a bowl game when they get to a 7-6 record or something like that. Yeah, that's all well and good, but they didn't make the playoff. They won the Boca Raton Bowl or something, or Hawaii wins the Hawaii Bowl at their own stadium. Whoever the case may be. If you're in the playoff, you say, yeah, all right, let's just say Wake Forest, for example. They're the 12th team, but they make the playoff in the first round, and they lose. All right, Wake Forest, 2021 college football playoff participant. To me, that's better than saying, yeah, we won the Boca Raton Bowl. We won the Cheez-It Bowl. The Pizza Hut Bowl. Whatever. If you're not winning a New Year's Six Bowl, now, again, you could do it this way. So the playoff right now has, and again, this is probably what they should do. The playoff does take 2 of the New Year's Six bowl games and makes them the semifinal games. I would say that's what you should do. That's where we get that's where we have to have a bigger conversation where, all right, what do you do with these games now? Like, do you incentivize home field advantage until the semifinals and then you play the semifinals at the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl or something like that, and then have the rotation, then of course the national championship? See, now this is just off the top of my head here. You could do the same thing. The semifinals are 2 of the New Year's Six games. Championship is still the championship. But the semifinals, sorry, you would have 4 rounds of playoffs. Beg your pardon. Because the top 4 need buys. And then you go to 8, then you go to 4, then you go to the championship game. The quarterfinals could still be at home field. Now, I haven't broken this down entirely, folks, but just hear me out. The losers of the quarterfinal, let's just say it's chalk that first round, right? So the top 8 are actually going to end up playing each other in the quarterfinals, right? After that first round. So let's say Oklahoma loses to Georgia, Michigan State loses to Alabama, Michigan loses to Oregon, and Cincinnati loses to Ohio State. All right, the top 4 are going to be your semifinal teams anyway. Well, the 5 through 8 teams, or at least the 4 losers, I think you should match them up in a quote-unquote losers bracket and send them to 2 of the other New Year's Six bowl games, and then keep the other New Year's Six bowl games. See, look at that. You just saw that there. New Year's Six games, 12 teams. You mean to tell me that you can't figure out a way where the New Year's Six is now reserved for the top 12? So how about this? You lose a playoff game. Say you lose in the first round. All right, we're going to go play in the Peach Bowl now and try to end our season with a win. Let's say Wake Forest has to go play Notre Dame after losing to Cincinnati or something like that. We'll go play in the Peach Bowl. So if you make the playoff, you're a top 12 team, you're going to go to the New Year's Six game. And the bowl games for everybody else are just your regular bowl games. The Gator Bowl, the Outback Bowl, some of the other big bowl games that are non-New Year's Six. But boy, I just, that is a genius idea. And I literally just came up with that right now. Genius idea. Maybe somebody else already thought of it too, but that's what I would do at this point. So and that'll appease the TV partners as well. So hypothetically, the top 12 are playing home games until the semifinals. And that's where you have, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and the semifinals or whatever the case may be. But then that'll help you to not dilute the Orange Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Peach Bowl. I'm forgetting the other one now off the top of my head. But you get my point. you have these top 12 teams all play in those bowl games. Treat the Rose and Sugar Bowl as the semifinals. And of course, you make a rotation, and then then college football can determine, we want the Rose Bowl to mean the most if it's not a semifinal game, we want the Rose Bowl to be the top game or something like that. Just make it a rotation, make it a complete rotation. New Year's 6. And again, if you're in the semifinals, I get, like, if you win the Rose Bowl in the semifinals, you're like, we won the Rose Bowl, but it was just the semifinal game. I get that, but you're never really going to fix that. But let's just say the Rose Bowl is not a semifinal game, and then you have some of the ones, say you have like Michigan and, Texas A&M somehow square off for the Rose Bowl after losing in the playoff. Yeah, I'd watch that. I know it's Big Ten and SEC and not Big Ten Pac-12. I understand that, but wouldn't that be awesome? Michigan, Texas A&M, Rose Bowl. Oh yeah, Michigan came up short. They were, not that it worked, was it? They're 6-11 right now, so they actually would play each other in the first round. But I'm just saying, Michigan made it to the quarterfinals, and they lost, but Texas A&M and so did Texas A&M. Both quarterfinal losers, but they're going to play each other. That's what I would do. You have the quarterfinal losers play each other, and you have the first round losers play each other. Now, if you're in the semifinals, forget about it. You're playing in the semifinals, and you're playing in the, again, just as an example, the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. So that's your opportunity for a bowl game, so to speak, and also a chance to go to the championship game. And of course, you play the championship game as the championship game. Look, folks, this is a genius idea. And I literally just thought about this right now. I don't know why you wouldn't do this. If you're going to expand, you might as well go all out. The top 12 get all the special privileges. You want to make college football elaborate and have the playoff and play to a true champion. Well, you're going to do this. Then you have to incentivize getting that 12th spot. But again, if you're 13th, you're going to get it. You're going to get a pretty good bowl game. You're going to get the Gator Bowl. You're going to get the Outback Bowl. There's a couple other ones that I'm not thinking of right now. The Outback Bowl is one of the biggest ones that I can think of. That's a non-New Year's 6. But you're going to get one of these bigger bowl games that's watched on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, or around that time. That's going to pit quality teams against each other. You're going to get one of them. If you're in the top 25, you're going to get a decent bowl game. But if you are a top 12 team, you deserve a New Year's 6. Because again, to do simple math here, 6 bowl games. The 6 best bowl games should go to 12 teams. The 12 best teams. Now, there could be logistics to fight over that because, again, you have to figure out how you're going to qualify these top 12 teams, right? Are you going to do all 5 Power 5 champions get in the top 12 and then are just seeded accordingly? The best group of 5 champion, and that's 6, and then you're going to have 6 wild cards at that point, and you're just going to seed accordingly. But if you are a Power 5 champ / the best group of 5 champion, you're going to automatically be in the top 12, and then you're just going to be seeded accordingly via the committee, which at that point I'm a little bit more fine with, as long as they're within the top 12. I mean, honestly, if you won your conference, you probably should go into the top 6. I mean, I guess it could vary. One Power 5 champion and a group of 5 champion could be worse off than maybe, say, the number 9 team in the country. Let's just say it's Notre Dame, and they actually are number 9 right now. Let's just say that, for example. Then you probably want to say, well, Notre Dame is a better team than those two. They won their conference, but they both have 2 losses. The group of 5 champion has 2 losses, so maybe we'll put them at 10. The Power 5 champion, let's just say it's I don't know. I'll just use let's say Oregon won at 10-2 or something like that. No, they're 10-2, 11-1, but Notre Dame's undefeated. Maybe we put Oregon at 6 and Notre Dame is 5 at this point. Something along those lines. But everyone's that's more of the nitty-gritty stuff that you'd have to figure out when you approve the 12-team format. But I'll tell you what, I love my genius idea. I love it. And again, top 12, everyone gets a New Year's 6 bowl, but you play the first round. The first round losers play each other. Go to the quarterfinals. Quarterfinal losers play each other. Of course, the quarterfinal winners go to the semis. Semifinal winners play in the Rose and Sugar Bowl, or it could be the Cotton or Peach and the Orange, but wherever the case may be. It's going to be one of those bowl game, two of those bowl games. You play the semifinals. Losers are done. Winners win those bowl games and go to the championship game. It's simple. Not quite so simple, but I don't know. That's one of the best ideas I've ever heard. I can't wait for someone to tell me that I'm wrong or that I'm crazy or that it's absurd to think that like that. But hey, you want to incentivize playing the entire season and to give teams a reason to fight into that playoff. If you get into the playoff, you're guaranteed 2 more games. Now, would there have to be adjustments to these schedules? Possibly. But the way I'm thinking about it is, look at the dates this year for Conference Championship Weekend. Okay, Rivalry Weekend is Saturday the 27th. Championships are the 4th of December. So you mean to tell me, if you're going to make a 12-team playoff, you just make that game, first round is the 11th. Second round, the 19th, or the 18th. Semifinals, you can push back to New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. And you could still do the championship game on, January 10th, whatever the case may be. But after the quarterfinals on the 18th, I'm just using this year as an example. You could still play. Let's just say the quarterfinal losers and the first round losers both play those New Year's Six games. Are still around. You can still do it around the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day mark, and as they usually do, and combine them with the playoffs. Folks, this schedule works out perfectly. Now, again, you're playing more games in college, and I get that. Let's just say, generally, if you're going to be like the 12th or 11th team, you're probably not winning your conference championship game. Probably not in it. So you've played 12 games, but you're going to play up to 14. Look, at the most games you could play is if you're a 12th seed, you've probably played 12 games at that point. Then you'd have to play 16. Win the first round, win the quarterfinals, win the semifinals, win the championship game. Win or lose the championship game, I should say. You're going to play 16 games. That's an NFL regular season. Not anymore because it's 17, but still. You can't, and again, too many games. Please, folks, it's money. Colleges won't care. At this point, since the players can make money off their own names, they won't care either. Safety? All right, if you want to pull out, that's fine. It's going to happen. They're going to go to the NFL. But if you're going to the NFL anyway, can't you make money off the NIL, especially capitalize on the playoff money? Come on, man. Or the playoff exposure? Look, it's just maybe it's just too good to be true. Maybe it's just me. All right, I rambled on enough. We're going to take a break. On the other side, we're going to dive into my 5-pack of picks. 1-4 for the second straight week, folks. This is not good. 30-20 on the year, so we're still 10 games above 500, but we've had a terrible 2-week stretch. 2-8. Not good. So hopefully we bounce back this week. I'll give you my 5-pack coming up after this break. Keep it locked here. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Back here in College Football Pick'em, final segment of the show on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Nick Kosko with you as always, taking you up to 9 a.m. today, week 11 of the college football season. And wow, I didn't think I was going to go on a rant like that, but hey, I just had a brilliant idea to fix the college football playoff and expand it at the same time. My goodness, I am a genius, and don't worry if you can't, or if you actually happen to miss it, don't worry. The show will be on demand on my YouTube page following today's broadcast as always. All right, 5-pack of picks, folks. 30-20 on the year. Sounds pretty good, right? Not when you were 28-12 just 2 weeks ago. 2-8 over the last 2 weeks. Horrible. And I went back and looked at last week where I almost just shut the TV off. Ohio State was minus 14.5 at Nebraska. They didn't cover. Took a chance with Liberty, plus 9.5 at Ole Miss. Didn't cover. Auburn at Texas A&M, plus 4.5. Auburn, folks. Finally took a chance on them. Disappointed. NC State minus 2.5 at Florida State. We got that right. All right. Boise State at Fresno State. Fresno State was minus 5, and they were dominated at home. Boy. We sure know how to pick them. College football pick them. Ha, ha, ha. All right, we're going to rebound now. as we move on, as we get past that awkward transition, we're going to try to rebound here in Week 11. So we're going to start out with, my Rutgers Scarlet Knights, who were absolutely blasted last week, 52-3 to Wisconsin. And I said, consider taking them to cover that game. Yeah, all right. Good thing I didn't actually take them. Not that it would have mattered last week anyway, but still. All right, but they're +7 at Indiana. And don't get me wrong, folks. Rutgers has played pretty bad. They played pretty well, and they've also played pretty bad this year. But guess what? Indiana has just played pretty bad all year long. Indiana stinks. Now, I can say this till the cows come home, and they could still beat Rutgers at home. But Indiana is a 7-point favorite at home against my Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Over-under at 43. I don't know if that's going to hit. I mean, I didn't think the over-under was going to hit last week, that total, with Rutgers and Wisconsin. But, Wisconsin basically did it themselves with 52 points. So this total could hit. But Indiana -7 is still bonkers to me. Now, I think there's a chance that Michael Penix Jr. is going to be back at quarterback this week. Now, they've gone through a lot. He's been hurt for most of the year. Jack Tuttle came in. He wasn't any good, but he also got hurt. So they put in Donovan McCulley, who was the freshman quarterback, and he was decent. But I think Penix Jr. might be back this week, so it's up in the air. Rutgers, meanwhile, I don't know. They might not have Noah Vedral. I believe it's a game-time decision for the Scarlet Knights. I think it was just on Thursday, it was trending that he was going to play. I'm pretty sure it's a game-time decision. This game is at noon, so we'll see how it progresses over the next couple hours. If he doesn't play, then I don't know their contingency plan. They have Cole Snyder and Evan Simon, but they also don't forget they have Gavin Wimsott, the true freshman who enrolled early. He was literally playing high school football back in September. He did play. He actually played against Illinois and completed that fourth down pass, sparked them to the win. I would say. I don't know. I doubt they would start him. At this point, they have 3 games left, so he could actually play in the rest of the year and then still redshirt for next season and be a redshirt freshman next year. It can happen. So if there's an opportunity to play him today, they might do that. But if Vedral plays, they're going to lean heavy on him. But I would say if Vedral plays, even if he's banged up, I think that Rutgers still has the advantage to me. They have to watch out for Stephen Carr, the Indiana running back, 600 yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns this year. Peyton Hendershot. He's one of their tight end / receiver hybrids. But Indiana's offense just stinks right now. They're 2-7 for a reason. They're not good. And the fact that Rutgers is a touchdown dog on the road, I got to take my Scarlet Knights. I spent way too much time in that football game, but I'll take Rutgers +7 in this one. Their former Big East rival, Syracuse, who Rutgers did beat head-to-head this year, actually. They're at their ACC foe, Louisville. They're +3 on the road. Syracuse, a surprising 5-4 this year. They have quite the rushing attack with Garrett Schrader at quarterback and Sean Tucker running back is in a battle right now for the rushing lead in the entire country with Kenneth Walker, the Michigan State running back. Good luck to Louisville defending that. I know they have Malik Cunningham at quarterback, one of the best dual threats in the country, but Syracuse +3 on the road. I just feel like Syracuse has been able to turn it around, and I think they are going to win this game outright. So we're going to roll with the orange +3 on the road at Louisville. All right, Minnesota at Iowa. Minnesota was knocked off by Illinois. Speaking of Illinois beating up everybody somehow, or the big teams in the Big Ten. They're at Iowa. Iowa's -5. They rebounded with the win last week. Unsure of their quarterback's plans this week. Spencer Petras was starting to pick it up earlier this year. Went down, got hurt, and didn't look good. And now it's Alex Padilla. If he starts, I'm more inclined to really hammer this home, but they're -5. I just feel like in the end, Minnesota is just too Jekyll and Hyde this year. Before that Illinois game last week, you're like, wow, Minnesota turned it around despite all the running back injuries, which they've lost now 3 running backs to season-ending injuries. So at some point, that's got to hurt you, and they couldn't get anything going against Illinois. And if you can't get anything going against Illinois, and now you're going to go on the road against Iowa, don't forget Iowa still has a pretty stout defense, and they have a good running back in Tyler Goodson, who didn't do anything last week for some reason. But at this point, I do like Iowa. They're at home. This will be one of those big bounce-back games for the Hawkeyes. I got Iowa -5 in this one. Miami at Florida State, we had some luck with NC State being a 2.5-point favorite on the road at the Seminoles. Same thing this week, Miami minus 2.5 on the road. Tyler Van Dyke has taken over that quarterback position and run with it since the injury to Derek King. They're looking better. Miami does need, I think it's one more win, and they are going to be bowl eligible under Manny Diaz. Yeah, they're 5-4. So one more win, and Manny Diaz has his team back into a bowl game. And it's a huge, huge thanks to Tyler Van Dyke, what he's been able to do. Don't forget Charleston Rambo, who's really come on in recent weeks. The former Oklahoma wide receiver really stepped up for the Hurricanes. He's got 860 yards, so he's approaching 1,000. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets over 1,000 for the season after this game. So I like Miami on the road. Florida State just no good. I think Mackenzie Milton might be back at starter this week. They're a mess. So Miami minus 2.5 at Florida State. And the final game, as I mentioned before, Arkansas, everybody's September darling, is I think going to go down this week. They're at LSU. LSU's a 2.5-point dog at home. You saw the way they play Alabama last week. Only lost 20-14. You know what? They're going to fight hard for Coach Orgeron. You know, for as much as the nonsense that came with him after that national championship game, and all these reports that came out, and that he's not going to finish. He's going to finish the year, and then he'll be gone after the season's over. But for what it's worth, Coach O, most of those players are going to play really hard for him. He's a player's coach. At least on the outside looking in, if I was a player for them, I would play hard for him, even if he's not going to be here at the end of the year. But the way they played against Alabama just gives me more confidence. And Arkansas, they've been okay since their hot start. So I like LSU this week, plus 2.5. Arkansas is already 6-3. LSU needs this win, though. They're 4-5. They need to win 2 of the last 3 games to be bowl eligible. Total is at 59. It's in Baton Rouge. Max Johnson's played well. Tyron Davis-Price has really stepped up at running back. We could see a higher scoring game as Treylon Burks is still lighting it up for Arkansas in the receiving department. But to me, just because of the home field advantage, I do like LSU here, plus 2.5. All right, so quick recap here. Rutgers plus 7 at Indiana. Syracuse plus 3 at Louisville. Iowa minus 5 at home against Minnesota. Miami minus 2.5 at Florida State. And we have LSU plus 2.5 at home against Arkansas. All right, those are my 5-pack of picks. That is going to do it for me. I hope I gave you enough reason to really pay attention to college football this week with those college football playoff rankings, my new expansion idea, and of course, these 5 games to, in the end, to make you money. That's why you're here. That's why you wait till the end of the show to listen to this. As always, 30-20 on the year, folks. So, I'm 10 games over 500. I've made you money this year. We just had a bad 2 weeks. We're going to rebound here in week 11 in the home stretch of college football. All right, talk to you guys next Saturday at 8 a.m. As always, you've been listening to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.